2015, an elite DFS Army Commando unit formed to bring high-level DFS strategy to the masses. Today, hated by DFS sharks and lineup sellers alike, they continue their quest to turn Joe into DFS pros.
Welcome back, everybody, to DFS Army's flagship NFL podcast, Geeks Vegas Lines for FanDuel and DraftKings, where Kevin, Mitch, and Chapadong discuss the more relevant plays for this week's NFL slate. Kevin is the founder and CEO of the DFS Army and is also ranked in both MMA and NFL on RotoGrinders for you DFSers out there. Mitch is also ranked in NFL and has hit the ground running in the Army with a numbers-focused coaching style. Chop, well, Chop is Chop, the notorious Smallaballa and everyman. Chop's niche seems to be providing off-color humor at the wrong times, throwing these guys off their games, and generally keeping everybody in the Army grounded, from our five-star generals to our newest privates, by focusing on the fundamentals of construction and bankroll management. We all go by the same names in the Army and out on Twitter. Kevin's handle is at FFootballGeek. Mitch is at DFSNDonuts. And I am at Chapadong. Feel free to give us a follow, and don't forget about the website Twitter of at DFS Army for all of your Army news, notes, and current free rolls and promotions that we have going. This podcast is designed to be a follow-along article, so if you want to go to dfsarmy.com and pull up the article, you can walk along game by game with us. Guys, how are we doing? It's week 7. The season's almost half over.
Awesome, man. Good to be back. What a week. Last week, another week, another massive winner. We've got one of our guys, Hunter Sinclair, now qualifying for the King of the Beach live qualifier on DraftKings, which is awesome. I'm going to have him on the VIP podcast this week with me, talk about that and a little bit of this week's slate. Last week was awesome. We talked about it on the pod here. I was all in on Jerick McKinnon, and we had a lot of Mark Ingram. So I love it when low-priced sort of players that people are sometimes afraid to play because they're a little low priced and maybe can't be that good because he's too cheap kind of players go off, because I loves me some value. So hopefully we'll identify a little bit more of that this week.
Mitch, what's up, man? Are you out there?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Yeah, I'm really excited about this week. Personally, I didn't have as good of a week as our members did. Our members absolutely crushed it this past week. And, I had the right player pool, but my constructions were just a little bit off. So I've been really excited for this week 7 here, and I'm excited to get going and start talking about these games.
Wash. Wait. I just want to say, it's good to wash the stank off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I need to.
Clean up.
One of these times there ought to be another podcast that we do or something where we talk a little bit about having the right players but the wrong mix and how often that happens to people, even with experience like yourselves. But obviously maybe that's for a VIP pod on a Friday or something coming up. So why don't we just take the time right now, jump right into Thursday night's games, and get this thing rocking and rolling?
Let's do it.
All right. Thursday night, Kansas City Chiefs on a short week, coming off of that Sunday night, Monday night, whichever one it was, going into Oakland, where we have a 46.5-point total and a 3-point spread favoring the road Chiefs. I mean, I enjoy playing these slates now that the other primetime games are being separated off onto their own slates, but I do worry about KC and their short week. But then again, Oakland's defense is pretty bad. Kevin, what do you see here as far as Kansas City and Oakland playability?
Well, first thing is to remember is the first thing we always think about on a Thursday game is can I fade this game? Or who are the players that can be faded and maybe not? So the reason we fade Thursday games sometimes is a short week. Teams don't really have a ton of time to game plan for the opposition. But in this case, another divisional game. Reminder, divisional games are fadeable. So we have a lot of interesting scenarios going on here. Looking at this entire game, top to bottom, there's only one player that's interesting, and I think I'm comfortable even fading him, and that's Travis Kelce. And the reason Kelce's interesting is because the Raiders have a long-term history of being terrible against the tight end position. It continues this year. So, why not roll out Kelce in what would be, in essence, a on-paper plus matchup. But because it's Thursday and I don't really want to play... I mean, obviously also Kareem Hunt, super great spot here. Actually, Hunt might be somebody that you can ignore the Thursday fade on because it's too good of a spot, and Kareem Hunt is the man. So Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce. I don't like anyone from Oakland here. I think Kansas City bounces back from what was an almost obvious letdown situation last week against their against the Steelers. Like, it was fairly obvious that was going to go down that way, and actually some of our sharp betting line type stuff that we do in the DFS Army where we track sharp bettors, a lot of money was coming in on the Steelers. No one liked the Steelers. It was just one of those spots. So I think the Chiefs are going to bounce back here.
Mitch, what do you have to add to this one?
Yeah, so usually when I play the Thursday Night Football slate, I like to fade that Thursday night game, unless there's a game where I think that it could go over the total, or that one of the two teams or both teams could go over their implied team total. I actually think the Kansas City Chiefs could go over this week. I am a little concerned at the pace of this game, though. Both teams are in the bottom 4 in the NFL in plays per game. The Chiefs actually run 60 plays per game, and Oakland runs 54 plays per game. So both offenses won't have as much time on the field as they normally will, or at least not as many plays. Alex Smith is the only guy I guess you could add in Harrison Butker, but both of them are the only two I'd be looking at for cash if I were to do the Thursday night slate. And I really don't want a piece of either team for GPPs. Alex Smith, only because he has hit 2 times his value in 15 consecutive games. So he's pretty safe, and he's also shown to have quite a high ceiling in 3 of the games this year by hitting 3x and 4x value out of those 3 games.
All right, sounds
in there.
fair. And
Nice.
Yeah, that's obviously an ownership play as well for GPPs. When we talk about the Sunday games, there's going to be a lot of games that we're just going to screen right through. And I don't know if this is the first one you guys are planning on completely just dodging on the podcast or not, but we've got Tennessee going into Cleveland with a 46.5 point total, so not terrible compared to what we have on the slate this week. 5.5 point spread for Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. Let's go to Mitch this time. Mitch, where do you see this one going?
All right, so I'm going to do my best not to get so analytical tonight. I'm going to try to leave the metrics and analytics that people are pretty accustomed to hearing from me, or at least reading from me in my articles. They do like it, but I'm going to try to keep it to our members-only Slack chat and our members-only articles. Maybe a freebie here and there for the public, but for the most part, the goodies, the supreme juice, that's going to be for our, it's going to be locked up. There's only one play I like out of this game, and that's Delaney Walker. He's 5,900 on FanDuel, and he's 5,800 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, if you're not going all the way up to Gronk, he's one of my favorite guys to pay down for this week. The Brownies have given up the 3rd most points to tight ends on DK and the 4th most on FanDuel. And, there's a couple other punts that are going to be viable plays, but with just how bad the Browns are against the tight end position, and he has a 21.2% target rate. There I go. I just broke my number 1 rule. I was going to leave the metrics out, but he has a 21.2% target rate, which is the 5th highest for tight ends. So, you could pay up for a guy who's going to get a fair share of targets. And on DraftKings, where he is actually the highest priced tight end, I actually think it's going to be quite contrarian to pay all the way up at 5,800 on DK this week for him, when a lot of people are just going to pay down.
Kevin, what are you going to spend much time researching this game?
I like this game. It's one of the higher projected games on the slate, and I happen to like games with 2 pretty bad teams going up against one another. So I don't mind this game at all. Cleveland's a little bit in the air right now with the whole quarterback situation, so I'm not really sure I can get comfortable with anybody on that team. Although, if I felt good about the quarterback situation, I might, take a punt potential look at some of their wide receivers. But actually, on top of Delaney Walker, who I love for the same reasons, Cleveland is historically bad against tight ends. They've been epically bad this season. But there's a second play here that I really kind of like, or a second/third. I believe that Mariota kind of seemed fine last week. He didn't have any setbacks. So assuming he's pretty well over his hamstring injury. I like Mariota here, but secondarily, and more importantly, Cleveland has one cornerback that is one of the top-rated cornerbacks in the league. And I talked about it last year, or I wrote it up in my Sunday note last week because they were playing the Ultra Chalk Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins combo last week. And I wrote about their cornerback, and I can't remember his name right now because he's a cornerback and he has no fantasy relevance for DraftKings purposes. But they have a top-notch cornerback that is, as of last week, the number 2 ranked Pro Football Focus guy at the position. So I always like defenses that have that one spectacular corner, because if we can figure out who he's covering, then we can take a look at the other guy, right? And so right now I'm going in with this assumption that Rashard Matthews is going to be covered by, and man, if somebody could remember the name of that corner on that team, I can't remember.
Jalen Ramsey.
Is Jalen Ramsey? Are we sure that's him? Jalen Ramsey on Cleveland?
I thought he was a Jaguar.
Oh gosh, I'm already looking at the next game.
Yeah, no, I forget his name. I and I don't have my CBWR chart in front of me, but whatever that is, and we haven't done our chart yet, unfortunately, this week to see who we think. But I believe he's going to be covering Rashard Matthews, which makes me very interested in a super punt, sneaky under the radar Eric Decker.
Ooh.
This week.
I will tell you this, the DVP chart shows against the wide receiver 2 that the Browns are actually a red square at the number 1 ranking, and against the wide receiver 1, they're dead last at 32. So it looks like whichever one it could be flip guy covers, you can just totally trash the other guy all day long.
That's what I'm talking about, and that could be flip flop, that number. Like the way the DVP chart works, the doesn't fully know. So, but whoever that spectacular, like that top ranked corner is covering, we want to, and I'll do a little more research as the week progresses to hopefully figure out who that's going to be. And
definitely throw that one on your VIP plan.
And Decker seems to play from the slot anyway, so I think no matter what happens, I think he's probably the guy.
Okay. Awesome. Let's move to Jacksonville at Indianapolis. We have the Jaguars going, and this is the Jalen Ramsey game that Mitch was referring to, going into Indianapolis, into the Dome. We've got a 43.5-point total, so lowest one so far, and I think it just goes downhill a little bit from here for the next few games. 3-point road favorite. Is Fournette in play, Kevin? Is that something that this feels just like a wrong game total to me. It just seems like that Jacksonville can blow this one up a little bit bigger.
No, I think
wrong?
I think it's exactly. There's really very little time to spend on this game. There's no interest here in the Colts. Very little interest in the Jaguars outside of course, Fournette, who is in a great spot, and they'll run him all day. I think the Jags will dominate the game, probably defensively. We didn't see a very, very sharp reset last week. I don't see how that changes. And the only place that you might want to look here on, the only other thought here is maybe on DraftKings, because we absolutely need some value this week. It's really, really brutal pricing where you kind of try to figure out, if one of the Jacksonville receivers are viable, because the Colts just are really bad against wide receivers in general. So, but outside of that, really, this is not a game to get too excited about.
Anything you're excited about, Mitch?
Not necessarily excited about, that Jalen Ramsey, what I was starting to talk about him, I think that completely takes T.Y. Hilton out of consideration in any format this week. Ramsey's been actually shadowing people all over the field this year, taking the number one receiver in every single game. So that's just not a team I want to attack with a passing offense. I actually think the Jags with Fournette is a solid stack this week. I like putting that running back with a defense stack when the opposing team gives up a lot of points and sometimes can be inept on offense. They have allowed 32 points per game to opposing teams, 32.5 points per game the Colts have. So Jacksonville is in a good position to go over that 23-point implied team total. And if they do that, it's likely going to be on the back of Leonard Fournette. Now, I do have to say, if Fournette is out this week, there's a dark horse that I think could end up leading the backfield. And there's nothing saying that Fournette should be out, but let's say he tweaks it in practice or has a rough go towards the end of the week, and they're thinking about limiting his reps. A guy I'm going to be looking at is a min price play on both sites for a large field GPP, likely one of those mass multi-entered GPPs like the Millionaire or the Sunday Million. I would look to Corey Grant. Corey Grant was a preseason superstar. He showed off ridiculous breakaway speed and had great yards after contact ability. I don't care if Ivory or Yeldon are around. Grant would be who I'd be looking to target for those large field GPPs. But that's all speculation, and I doubt that Fournette is out, but at least it's out there for you guys if he is.
Well, that's what a share or two of large field GPPs are for, is for your wackadoodle, freak flag flying, speculation, all that kind of stuff. So not a lot of time on that game. That's why we've got you big guns doing our podcast. Moving on to Baltimore at Minnesota. This one is a 39.5 point total and a 5.5 point spread for the home team Vikings. And I'll just let you guys take it away. Mitch, why don't you lead the way on this one? I see a whole lot of red on our DVP chart, so I can't imagine you guys are excited here either.
No, this game is brutal. The Vikings defense is in superb position this weekend, but they'll be very chalky. There are some other defenses worth targeting, but the Vikings will certainly be one of them that savvy owners will use for at least their cash games. Other than that, I really don't want anything to do with this game, and that includes Adam Thielen, who was finally priced up to value, and he's just no longer a target for me.
Well, all right. Mitch bailed early. Kevin, take it away.
I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. We are not going back to J-Rock McQuinnan necessarily this week, super hardcore. I don't mind him, but his price was jacked up to absurd levels on DraftKings this week. So, and the matchup isn't great. I'll use him a little bit. He's fine, but outside of that, can't use any Ravens really here. They're just not in a good situation. Both of their wide receivers could be potentially hurt. I don't know who they're throwing to this week, and their running backs are a disaster. So, yeah, Minnesota defense, maybe some McQuinnan.
Let me ask you this, and then we can move on to the next game. But when I'm thinking of a Joe Flacco type of quarterback who's on the downside of his career, who's not throwing the ball very far down the field anymore, and actually not even throwing it very often anymore, does that actually devalue that chalky Minnesota defense in you guys' opinion?
No, I just want to point out, it's not that Flacco's just coming off an injury. Like, he's just not fully healed. He's not on some downside of a career or aged. Or I don't think that's what his issue is. I think his issue is he's coming off a massive injury. He hasn't gotten back up to speed. I think it was a back injury, but like some of these injuries just don't heal. Everybody thinks these injuries just heal up and they're playing. That means they're fine. But you have to have a preseason. I just think he's off his game because he's coming off hurt. And I don't think this is a long-term, like, Joe Flacco sucks now thing. I just think, the guy came off, he got hurt. He didn't have a preseason. He didn't have any OTAs or any of that shit. And you'll see how bad Andrew Luck is this year. And you'll understand. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means a guy doesn't come in off of a long-term injury and all of a sudden be good. He's going to be terrible.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but does that devalue him against Minnesota, where they're likely not going to throw it a lot with him, and he's not really going to be airing it out to become turnover prone enough that the defense can capitalize? I guess that's more the question there.
I think if they're down in the game, they're going to have to throw, no matter what. So I don't know that just the fact that Flacco's not throwing a lot in general right now, they've been fortunate enough not to be forced to throw, but I think they're going to have to try to throw to. If they go down, they're going to have to get back in the game. He's going to throw, and if he's going to throw interceptions, there's defensive scoring potential there. It's just
right.
It's more about game flow.
Chop, I'd like to add in, they 3 out of the last 5 games, Flacco's actually thrown over 34 passes, and he has 8 interceptions on the year. He's already got 8 turnovers. He actually has 9 turnovers if you take the fumble into account. So he's been a turnover machine. And the Vikings, they're likely going to just stuff the run. They're going to force Flacco to throw. And who's he going to throw to? I can't remember who it was with Macklin. One of those guys got hurt last week. Mike Wallace.
Macklin was out last week, and Wallace is now questionable. So
right. So he's going to be thrown to a bunch of bums. He's going to have a good pass rush coming at him, team that stops the run, and he's turnover prone. So the Vikings are pretty good cash games.
Then my impression is wrong. I'll throw the white towel in. You'll let you guys stop tag team beating the hell out of me here, and let's move on to the next game. How's that sound?
There we go.
New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins. There I was just thinking I was being all smart and stuff. But New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins, 38.5 point total, 3-point Miami Dolphin favorite. God, it's another brutal game to me. Who goes first this time? Kevin, you?
I mean, since it's the Jets, the reality is the Dolphins have played like pretty okay defense, I guess. Interesting. But this 38.5 point total is just horrible. I actually think the game might play to the under, actually, because Dolphins' offense is so bad, and they're, it's just a shitty game. There's nothing to do here. I don't even know which defense I would want to choose. It's in a divisional game. There's literally nothing to do here but move on to another game that's not as ugly.
All right, Mitch?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, too. This is just getting really depressing. This is like our third game in a row. It just looks terrible.
I like weeks like this, by the way. I just want to say that. We could focus in on the games that are big. I mean, that's fun. I like that. So it doesn't bother me that there are 6 or 7 games under 42 total this week because, all right, let's just concentrate on the good ones.
No, you're right. You're definitely right in that aspect. I think people get lost in the minutia of the numbers, and they think they've got to find the best play from each game, and they'll start targeting some terrible players on terrible teams just because they feel like they can't have it all focused on 3 or 4 games or 3 or 4 teams. For large field GPPs, though, where we're really trying to mix and match some of our exposure and try to find that high upside play at a low ownership, Austin Safarian-Jenkins might be that tight end that we need. But outside that, I completely agree with everything you said. I want nothing to do with this game.
I like that. I like the Austin Safarian-Jenkins call.
Let's spike that one and move on. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Buffalo Bills. This game is obviously offline still. It's got a 3-point spread, but it has no total. Buccaneers have been a disappointment. This feels like a shady spot, but my big question, Mitch, we're leading off with you. My big question is, do we actually like Tyrod Taylor because of that bad Tampa Bay secondary? But it's not like we got any receivers to throw to. What's he going to be able to do?
That's a great lead, Chop. It's really a bummer that the Bills don't have a viable primary receiving target. Tampa secondary is giving up 23 points per game to opposing wide receiver ones. So if they had a solid target, if Tyrod had a solid target, I'm sure he could filter a handful of targets in that direction. If Jordan Matthews comes back and he plays this game, he might be someone worth looking at for large field GPP. But honestly, if we go with Tyrod, I think the best usage of him would be a large field GPP and to use him naked. I just don't think there's anybody worth stacking with him. And you hope he racks up some rushing yards. On the Tampa side of the ball, I think you'll see a decent amount of ownership on Mike Evans, as people think that now it's his week without Patrick Peterson following him all around. But the Buffalo Bills have been pretty good against opposing wide receiver ones. They're middle of the road, giving them about 15 points per game on DraftKings. But what I'm really nervous about for the Buccaneers offense is the Bills are only allowing they're actually under 15 points per game to opposing offenses. That's the best rate in the NFL. They are ferocious on defense right now.
That's
the
nasty.
Bills Mafia, yes, absolutely. And the Bills Mafia is going to be jacked up. The team's going to be hyped, and Winston's hurting. And if Ryan Fitzpatrick is the starting quarterback, all bets are off. I think that the Bills would vault to one of my top 2 or 3 defensive GPP plays for the week, and I would definitely start targeting them more so than the offense in this game.
Number 1 overall if Fitzpatrick plays.
I like
easily.
it.
Easily.
There we go. We're not going to buy was Ryan Fitzpatrick in Buffalo before he was in New York with the Jets?
Yes.
And as a Bills fan,
a
lifelong Bills fan, we loved him. We loved him when he was here, but if he comes in, you better be sure that I'm going to fire up that Bills defense.
By the way, the fact that you called it Bills Mafia, like no one ever has heard of that except if you're from
Get
Buffalo.
Out of here.
No one's heard of it. Trust me, no one has heard of that.
Question
Whatever,
is,
man. Bills Mafia 69.
which side does the revenge narrative play harder to?
Let me
In that
tell
one,
you,
I'm guessing the Bills defense.
I don't give a crap. I don't care. Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't have the talent to put forward a revenge narrative in any way that's going to be anything except him throwing it to Bills cornerbacks. Come on, it's fucking Ryan Fitzpatrick. This guy has robbed more teams of their money. He's the greatest criminal, the greatest thief, and the first team that got robbed was the Bills. $75 million to Ryan fucking Fitzpatrick, the Amish Rocket? Really, guys?
Why do you think they call it Bills Mafia?
Yeah, the Bills Mafia. Did they need to actually shake down the entire city of Buffalo to pay this motherfucker's salary so he could throw interceptions like nonstop? He does not have the talent to be an NFL quarterback. He'll do it for like 1 year and then he just falls apart. He can't do it even for one game. So, man, I hope that this guy plays. I hope that we get Ryan Fitzpatrick so I can go all in on Buffalo and not have to think about it like, I don't have to think about other defenses. No, I just locked it in. I hit the little lock button on the domination station.
Jets fan.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Holding out.
Next time, tell me how you
Honestly,
really feel. Don't beat around the bush.
Wait. I'm taking this further. I wish that guy was still on the Jets this year, just so we could get the number 1 overall pick in the draft, because we brought in someone in McCown who's not as bad, and therefore we're actually screwing up the first pick in the draft by winning games against other horrible teams, because the NFL is filled with terrible teams this year. Thank you. Rant off.
Brutal.
And play LaShawn McCoy this week, along with Buffalo Bills defense. That's it.
Mic drop. It is the Mitch and Chop show from here on out. Kevin has left the building.
Finished with this. Damn.
You got anything else to add? You can't follow that fire, can you, Mitch?
No, man, I'm just going to be quiet.
Awesome. Carolina Panthers at Chicago Bears. Boy, I got to wipe that brow. That's sweat building up here. We've got a 40.5 point to another putrid game. 3-point favorites are the Carolina Panthers on the road. God, I'll just let you guys do it. Mitch, it's your turn to lead one off since Kevin dropped the mic, and he'll be back after he smokes a cigarette.
All right, I'll take it over for a little bit here. Jordan Howard, he has to be in consideration, right? I mean, the dude had 36 carries last week. Looks like the Bears are going to run the ball a billion times. I don't think they're doing that to hide Trubisky's talents either. I really think they're just trying to hide their terrible wide receiving core. It's got to be the worst in the NFL. It's one of the worst wide receiving cores I've seen in years. So Trubisky, they threw him to the wolves last week against the Vikings.
And you're a Bills fan.
It's bad, man.
Wait, hold on a second. Yeah, hold on a minute.
Oh, God, here we go.
Hold on a second.
He's back.
Who's the wide receiver for the Bills right now? Jordan Matthews on the shelf?
I don't even want to talk about it, man. I don't even know if Zay Jones is still alive.
Zay Jones has caught 3 passes all year. Does
that
count as a wide receiver? Because I'm pretty sure there are fullbacks.
He's wide receiver eligible.
There are offensive linemen who have more receptions this season than Zay Jones.
Listen, is this the Crush the Bills fans podcast? I don't understand what's happening.
No,
this is brutal.
I'm a Jets fan, man. Who do we have? Robbie Thompson? I mean, we don't even know that. There's a competition for it, but no, I agree with I'm jaded because I have Cameron Meredith or whatever the hell that guy is on my dynasty team. That didn't work out. Cameron Hayden.
All right, back on the rails, boys.
Yeah, I don't even know where I was. Their wide receivers suck. Howard is a GPP option. I know they're home underdogs. I generally don't like to target home underdogs at running back position, same as defense. But with the workload that Howard could see, he's got to be in GPP consideration. He's going to be a good pivot off of similar price running backs in that price range as well. The Panthers, they're so annoying to roster this season, but Cam has thrown up 3 straight top 5 scoring games for quarterback on both FanDuel and DraftKings. A word of caution, though, the Bears are only allowing 12 points per game to opposing QBs this year. That's largely due to their pace of play being in the bottom half of the NFL, and they have the league's 3rd highest run rate. They run the ball 49% of the time. That's like 1970s football.
I'm gonna jump in just to add a little bit to this game. Well, I don't really want to add to this game so much as I want to say Cam Newton, man, he looks okay for like a week or two, but it almost seems like he's just covering up some suckiness. Like his accuracy is so bad, and I don't really know. I feel like I've never quite seen a quarterback like Cam Newton. It's almost like he masks a lack of touch on his passes with just raw athleticism. Like he's got this athleticism and he can do stuff, but when you try to sit him back, like he overthrows Kelvin. It's so brutal to have Devin Funchess or Kelvin Benjamin on your team, and you're watching the game and you're like, he's wide open and you just can't hit him with the pass. So I am not a believer in Cam Newton. I know he's had a couple good games. I definitely don't like him in this game for all the reasons you said, Mitch. Chicago's just been a team that plays to the under, like for every single game this year, and there's just no reason to get involved with any offensive players whatsoever. I hear you on Jordan Howard. I haven't rostered Jordan Howard even once this year, not once, and regretfully. I mean, he's done okay, so I don't have any problem with it. But outside of that, this game is just not something you want to get involved with in daily fantasy. It's just the wrong spread. It's the wrong total, and just this team, Chicago in particular, they just have played to the under. We want to get involved with these games that teams are playing to the over on it, and this just isn't that. So let's find a game where we have a chance of actually outperforming expectations instead of praying we barely hit expectations, which is kind of what I think would happen if you're watching the Chicago-Carolina game and you have players going. You're just like, oh, man, just bring me some value.
You're almost prophetic because the next game is New Orleans at Green Bay.
Hey,
and with New Orleans going into Green Bay, we've got a 47.5-point total, which looks like it might as well be 75 this week. A 5.5-point spread on the New Orleans Saints on the road going into Lambeau, which is obviously the Aaron Rodgers void is why that spread flipped the way that it did. But what'd we do? Kevin was smoking a cigarette, so Mitch led off the last game. Kevin, this one's yours. Take off.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough when you have a team starting a new quarterback and just have no clue because in general, I think there's some sneaky GPP appeal here, right? No one's going to want to mess around with the Packers' offense. In a game like this, we don't know anything about how they're gonna really look with Aaron Rodgers on the shelf. So obviously for cash games, it's very difficult. The other problem is with the Packers, we don't really know if Aaron Jones is the guy. Is it Ty Montgomery? Is it there was no clarity provided last week. Nothing. We did not get an answer to which guy is the starting guy. Basically, actually, we did get an answer, and the answer was it's going to be ugly. And it's going to be a split, and they're going to use them 50-50, and that'll probably be how it continues. I don't know anything about Brett Hundley. I've never seen him play outside of last week. He seemed to do okay. If you don't mind throwing 3 interceptions, then great. But, I mean, is this the time to fire up the Saints defense again? On the road, maybe. I mean, it's hard to trust Brett Hundley, man. 3 interceptions last week. I mean, I guess it was Minnesota. This is a different team. I don't know. I think there's some GPP appeal on the Packers side. I'm going to go there. Just because of the unknowns, I think most people will just avoid it. But this is the Saints, and they do score a lot, and they give up a lot of points. But then again, the Saints defense, at least at home, has been, amazing. So I don't know what the hell's going on. My world is to cats and dogs living together. It's complete anarchy.
Nice. Mitch, give us some Law and Order.
All right, yeah. So I think Kevin nailed it there at the end. I think the Packers offense is actually an appealing large field GPP option. The Saints have actually allowed opposing teams, or actually forcing opposing teams to throw the ball 63% of the time, which is the 4th highest passing rate in the NFL. So teams, when they face the Saints, they don't run very often. They're only running the ball 37% of the time. So if the Packers were to score this weekend and keep pace with the Saints, it's going to be on the arm of Brett Hundley. And if that happens, then these wide receivers will definitely be under-owned because no one's going to want to touch them this week. And that's a very good way to get a nice jump over a large portion of the field for large GPPs. That said, I really think the Saints defense is a great option this week as well. The Packers are only projected to score 21 points at home. Speaking of stacks, last week on my Stacks and Stacks members-only article, I had written up a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, and Saints defense stack as my headliner for large field GPPs.
Wow.
And then, yes, and that was
Did
my
you play
top
it?
one. Listen, so then I was trying to find some research on the offensive line of the Lions, and I couldn't find what I was looking for. I ended up deleting it from the article and taking it out of my lineup. It was in my one large field GPP lineup that I made for the week as well, and that lineup just ended up tanking. I won't make that same mistake twice. I'm giving this as a freebie right now. I'm going to have that same exact double running back with the defense stack, especially on DraftKings this week. I'm going to write about it in the article, the VIP article only, and it's going to be filled with all the fancy metrics and analytics our members have become so accustomed to hearing from us.
Ooh, let me ask you this. This question goes to both of you, and I don't know if I've got you on opposite sides of the field here, but this is one of my favorite things to do, gun to your head. Brett Hundley or Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Oh, jeez.
Oh my God, Brett Hundley.
Which one would you rather take?
You don't need to point a gun. Brett Hundley all day.
Yeah, I have to agree.
You sounded so uncertain. I thought I'd throw the hatred of Ryan Fitzpatrick at you, see if I could spike another rant.
Oh, you know what, Chop? I do want to add one thing. I was just thinking about this before our podcast here tonight. Drew Brees is priced up so much on DraftKings this week that I think it might be a pretty contrarian play to actually pay up $7,600 on DraftKings for Drew Brees. He's the top quarterback on the slate. I think the next guy might be Marcus Mariota. So it might be kind of contrarian to pay all the way up for a guy who a lot of people don't like to use when he's on the road. They're still implied to score 26.5 points on the road at Lambeau. And, if Brees goes out there, Brees has only thrown over 300 yards one time this year. That's mind-boggling. That's absolutely mind-boggling. This guy seems to throw over 300 yards every game, no matter if he's home or away. The only things he's usually lacking on the road are his touchdowns. This year he's throwing touchdowns left and right, but he's not throwing yardage. There's got to be some regression at some point, right?
It sounds like that's where you were headed with that.
I mean,
absolutely.
On the same thought process, Mike Thomas, maybe this is the week.
Oh, I hope so.
I mean, at some point he's got to have a big week.
That's like the Amari Cooper well. We just keep going back to him.
I mean, Mike, he's not as bad as Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper's just but Michael Thomas, man, what a disappointment.
That's a good point, though, Kevin. He's down to 7,700 on FanDuel, and FanDuel's all about those touchdowns. That's a great play.
Especially if he burned everyone last week. I love coming. Mitch, you've mentioned this too, but I love coming back to guys after they've burned everybody the week before, especially in GPPs, but even just in general.
Week before? Just once?
I mean, Thomas, no, he was okay.
Right.
He was okay. He had a couple decent games against Miami and Carolina. Not good games. I mean, 20 points I don't think for a stud is that good on DraftKings. Like, it's just acceptable.
That's what I'm saying.
Cash value, yeah, but he's not done what... He has not justified his salary yet this year.
All right, well, let's take this one to the next one. Unless there's final thoughts and rebuttals on it.
Keep on moving. Let's just go through them.
Arizona Cardinals versus LA Rams. This one's the one in London, if I'm not mistaken. So there really is no home team here. There's another smattering of red all over this freaking DVP chart, and it's a division game, which I don't know what that means transferring into London. So I think this one we're due for Mitch to lead this one off. How high? We already mentioned Gurley before we even kicked onto the air that we don't necessarily like him. Are you in agreement there, or can you back that up with some numbers?
Well, Gurley, I've had some serious Gurley love this year, and I'm realizing as I look back at my articles, I'm writing about him every single week. He's just being used so much this year that he's hard to ignore in both cash and GPPs. This week, though, I think it's going to be the week I finally hop off him. A couple weeks after not scoring for a while, he's likely due to score. But I got to hop off sooner or later, and the Cardinals defense only giving up 11 points per game to opposing RB1s on FanDuel, which means they're just not giving up touchdowns. They're not giving up much touchdowns at all this year, or many touchdowns. I like the running back on the other side of the game. Adrian Peterson, people are going to chase those points. And, the question when you look at a running back like that is, should they? Should they chase those points? Do you want to chase a guy after a huge week, a la Melvin Gordon, who we'll talk about later? I think you have to. He's so cheap still on FanDuel, where touchdowns are king, and he's playing against such a terrible rush defense. The Rams, specifically for fantasy, are giving up the second most points per game to opposing running back ones on FanDuel and DraftKings. So they're giving up catches, they're giving up touchdowns. AP, I'm just not going to get too cute. I'm going to lock AP in, especially in cash games and a lot of our ladder system that we talk about with our members in Slack chat. And I'll mostly be fading the Cardinals passing offense. I won't be chasing the ageless wonder, Larry Fitzgerald. That's about all I'm going to be looking at playing this week will really be AP.
Kevin, what do you think?
Interesting take. So I really like this game, actually, across the board. I think, the London games are sometimes high scoring. They can be a little mysterious, a little dangerous in cash because these guys get out to London. They want to go to the pub, have some warm beer, go see Big Ben and do a little bit of sightseeing, and they kind of get out of their routines. But I think there's a little magic happening with Adrian Peterson. I think he's got a little bit of vintage AP happening right now, and I really feel like it was a terrible miss last week to not foresee this. And that's on me. That's on me. I didn't really...
I don't know how you could foresee it, honestly.
You could have. It's a miss. It's a miss. Should have foreseen it. Because if you think about what this guy's situation has been, right? He's been with the team. They're not running him at all. He's pissed off. He's not getting the touches. They bring him out to a team that loves playing old people. All right? Everybody on that team is basically a senior citizen for the NFL standards. So this is basically like the senior team coming out against the kids. And here they bring in, the king of the seniors, Adrian Peterson. And the fact that they cut Chris Johnson, another old man, I mean, these guys are loath to cut players over the age of 40 ever. So for them to do that was a real commitment to Adrian Peterson, and I should have foreseen it. Here's what the one thing to keep in mind is. But I think a little of his magic is back. Or at least I want to believe it. And I want to be on the train, just in case it's true. I don't like the price on DraftKings because he does not get receptions and they're not going to throw to him. But on FanDuel, which is a slower site, obviously, to change salary levels, the salary for Adrian Peterson is super reasonable. You can get him in your lineup and afford lots and lots of other good things. So he's a guy that I want on FanDuel as probably the top play of the slate, but keeping in mind that he's not a cash play, certainly not on DraftKings, because he doesn't catch the ball. And I don't necessarily agree on the Fitzgerald thing. I'm perfectly fine with chasing those points. I don't think that game happened after. Let's see if they changed the salary all that much. Okay, they jacked him up a little bit, but not too bad.
Yeah,
he's at 73. Yeah, he did get priced up a little bit, which I don't love. But this is a slate without a whole lot of stud appeal at the top. I definitely like some of the other guys, like Dez maybe for a little bit more, or AJ Green, or even certainly Antonio Brown potentially, although you're not going crazy with those two on a tough matchup. But yeah, Fitzgerald's one of the studs that I think you got to maybe consider getting some exposure to. Not a whole lot to like on the Rams outside of Gurley, obviously.
Okay. Well, we're already into the 4 p.m. games. So to me, it feels like we've got a pretty good pace going for our own podcast. Dallas goes into San Francisco, where we've got a 46.5-point total. Dallas is a 6-point road favorite, which is obviously pretty darn hefty. And we get Zeke for one more week. Does that make Dak Prescott a cash viable road target, Kevin?
I think Dak is viable every single week. He is the most consistent football quarterback going back for the past 2 years. That's not changing. The only negative to Dak is he's priced up a little bit here. But outside of that, he's absolutely a cash play every single week of the season. With the exception of, I guess, against the Broncos that one time. But and this is no different. He's in a great spot. I mean, San Francisco, they're terrible at everything. So you could just have your will. You have your way with them. San Francisco, what do they do well? Maybe not as horrible at the running back. I mean, there's nothing they do well defensively. And now they're busting out with some other quarterback that's not Brian Hoyer. Not that Hoyer's been any good. So it just makes it this is a beatdown situation. This is a Zeke Elliott all the way game. You could play Dak too. Actually, my one concern with Dak here is just that he doesn't need to do anything.
Would you pair them both together again?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that in cash. I don't know that, by the way, when Zeke was going to be out, Dak was my quarterback play. I have to mentally readjust. When Zeke was going to be out, Dak was my play of the week. All in, Dak to Dez. Great matchup, and without a dominant running back, I thought they would have to throw. But I think now with Zeke back and Zeke mad because, the man trying to keep him down or whatnot, I don't know how much they're going to need Dak. I don't know how much they're going to need Dez here. Not that the 49ers can stop either of them, but I just don't know how much they're going to need them. So rethinking it a little bit, this isn't a week where I'm going to go nuts and force Dak at his also very, very jacked up salary. When I'm going to try to find maybe some better value. Like, he's right under Breeze on DraftKings, like a couple $100 less, and I think I like Breeze a lot better for a little bit more. So I'm probably not going to use Dak in a cash game, but I will be all virtually. I don't know about all in, but because the price on Zeke Elliott is crazy, it's insane. But I'd like to get as much Elliott as I can afford.
Mitch, where are you standing?
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts that are very similar to Kevin's. I really like Dak and Zeke together for cash games this week. I think that's a great play, especially on FanDuel, where Dak is sandwiched between Matt Ryan and Drew Brees. He's also almost a grand less than Tom Brady, all the way at the top. So you could grab Dak, hope he scores, throws a couple, runs one in, and then you could lock in Zeke Elliott, who's, I think, 8,700, man. That is a sweet bargain on FanDuel this week. Again, with his matchup and the high implied team total, I think that he's going to just run with a vengeance this week. And the 49ers, those poor 49ers linebackers, they're just going to get mauled. Dak Prescott, he's only had 2 games in his entire career outside of Week 17 last year when they rested him for most of the game that he hasn't made value at 2 times his salary. He's the quintessential perfect cash game play with a ceiling. He's perfect for our ladder system that we preach to our members too. He's got the floor with the upside, the safety with the ceiling. He's perfect for that. As far as large field GPPs, though, I tend to agree with what Kevin said. I'm also having to shift my mindset of how I wanted to use Dak. I was really excited about going all in on him this week if Zeke was going to be out. But we're going to have to change that this week now that Zeke is back. They're going to lean heavily on him, and I don't think Dak will have to throw the ball more than 28 to 30 times. He could still be incredibly efficient and throw a couple touchdowns, but as far as needing him to do much more than that, I doubt he needs to. Now, if he does, and you do think for whatever reason that the 49ers will be able to keep the pace with CJ, how do you say his last name, Beathard? If you think that they're going to keep the pace with CJ in there, then you've got to run some type of 49ers play running it back. You've got to go, if you're going Dak Zeke, you've got to come in running it back with Carlos Hyde or Pierre Garçon. If you think that for whatever reason, 49ers are going to keep it a close game, competitive, maybe it's high scoring, there's got to be some way for you to benefit on game stacking that in a large field GPP. Otherwise, I wouldn't touch Zeke and Dak in a large field GPP because I just don't think the upside is high enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I just think it's tricky. It's not a great GPP scenario.
Let's before we move to Cincinnati, let me bring in one more thing because not to get too deep into this, but this is where I always go. When I hear about quarterbacks that have some legs that do a little bit of rushing, they do better with big-name running backs because they're harder to defend against because you don't know who the hell's going to run the ball and take off with it with the bootlegs and this and that and the other. And maybe we're talking more designed runs, which Dak probably doesn't do. But for me, I was getting more excited when Zeke was back into the fold because I don't see Dak as a pure passer. I see him as somebody that needs that guy in the backfield to offset that defense so they can't just lay back and pin their ears back on a pass rush and coverage. Instead, they have to account for more multi-depth in that defensive scheme that they run against these guys, which opens up Dak for his ceiling or for, at least solidifying his floor. So it's a little bit opposite of where you guys are. And so it's really kind of, it's almost a little disheartening for me to hear that you guys were really interested in Dak versus Dez, and when Zeke was sitting out that, okay, well, I really like Dak more because I like him less.
I'm going to add something to what you just said because you're not on the wrong track. But the issue is they're playing against a 49ers team that's starting a quarterback whose name none of us is able to actually pronounce. So if this was a competitive situation where it was going to be a close game or had a chance, and by the way, Dallas defense is playable. But if this was a competitive situation where it was going to be this close game, then or we expected some sort of a close game, then I would actually fully agree with what you're saying, that having the quality running back opens up secondary. They got to bring in the safety to cover that position, and it opens up some deep passing. But in this case, I don't really think that comes into play because I think the 49ers are so bad that there's just they're not going to be able to give the Cowboys any reason to throw it any more than they absolutely need to.
Okay, that's fair enough for me. I find it funny because this time, last time a few games ago, you guys both came into the corner and just beat me to a little pulp in there. I think this time you guys kind of like came in fists up and then you kind of tickled me instead. So anyway, let's move on to Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. We've got ourselves another division rival game. And I think I'd mentioned that they played each other again. I think, Mitch, you corrected me in that they haven't played each other yet. But we've got a putrid 41.5-point total. The Steelers are 5.5-point favorites at home. Mitch, I think it's your turn to go first. Where do you stand on this game?
I'm just going to throw in a suggestion here. Let's just have Mitch do one. I'll do the next. There's 3 horrible divisional games coming up in a row. Mitch, you handle this one. Let's just do back and forth to that. Let's do some quick hitters with these 3 games.
Yeah, not a problem. Can I just say completely fade this game? The top play of the game would be Le'Veon Bell at running back, right? He's been incredibly reliable the last few weeks. He's getting tons of volume. Cincinnati Bengals are only allowing 7 points per game to opposing RB1s, and that's on DraftKings. They're not letting up passes out in the flats. They're not giving up much yardage. So you think, oh, okay, someone's got to benefit, right? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and throw in Antonio Brown. Well, against opposing wide receiver ones, they're in the bottom 10 in the league, only giving up 10 points per game on DraftKings. So I want nothing to do with the Steelers offense, even though they're at home. And the Bengals are just an absolute mess to me. I guess you could go ahead and give A.J. Green a look. But just, these teams seem to always play to the under, and there's better targets on the slate.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. The projection systems that I've seen throughout the industry so far, every single one of them seems to love A.J. Green.
Oof,
I don't know. I don't know why. They're all like recommending him as the top wide receiver play, which I think is that one I didn't see it coming either.
Is that the blind leading the blind? The Steelers have given up 4 points per game to opposing wide receiver ones on DraftKings. Opposing wide receiver ones on DraftKings are only scoring 4 points. I had to say it twice because that stat is ridiculous. They're going to bracket covered A.J. Green the entire game. I know he's actually had some success against the Steelers in his career, but the Steelers' defense is just a little bit different this year, and their pass rush is nothing to mess with. And Andy Dalton's going to be in trouble back there.
Well, I'm going to say thank you because when I saw that, I was just like, oh, my God, what am I missing? What am I missing? Because I don't want anything to do with this game personally either. So, anyway.
By the way, there is some precedent for A.J. Green going off in bad matchups. Like, that happens all the time. So, I mean, he's that one wide receiver who always seems to, you give this ugly matchup, and like against the Bills the other week, and he goes off. So, I get it.
Okay, well, I know we said that, Mitch would take this game and you'd take the next one over, but can you tell me why would you consider A.J. Green cash safe as much as those projections are predicting that he's going to blow up for? Or he's risky, right?
Yeah, it's the entire play is, listen, he's at home. And A.J. Green does do well in tough matchups. Like, you'd think the Steelers are a good defense. They're going to stop the run. And, what else are the Bengals going to do? They're going to throw it to Green. So, I think Green is cash playable every single week of the season unless he's going up against an Xavier Rhodes or an elite cornerback that can shut him down. And I don't think the Steelers have a cornerback. They have a good quality all-around defense. They don't have a corner that is a shutdown corner. And I just think Green is somebody who's playable every week. And in a week like this where if you look top to bottom on DraftKings at the board, the other guy's Antonio Brown, who we said, not super excited for. The Bengals do have a shutdown corner, Pac-Man Jones. You have Des Bryant. Don't think they're going to need to use him that much. Mike Evans, he ain't doing shit with a hobbled Winston or at Buffalo. Mike Thomas, we already talked about him. Larry Fitzgerald, Kelvin Benjamin, Stephon Diggs is hurt. Jordy Nelson, no quarterback. Jarvis Landry, no cornerback. Adam Thielen. I'm down now into the sixes. Who are we using?
I'll tell you what I would do. I'd pay down in all 3 spots, go double high at running back, and cut my floor as high as it can go and move on.
That's one way to do it. Yeah. But if you look at the list, so yeah, I could see A.J. Green potentially being the best of that group. If you add in the Patriots game, then it's another story. But on DraftKings, we don't get that game.
Okay, well, that goes back to Mitch blind leading the blind. It's kind of like the default best choice of all of them. So not that it's a bad choice. It's just that's why it's so high. Anyway, Kevin, let's let you take this one because Seattle and New York Giants probably can't have a lot to talk about other than maybe the Seattle defense.
Or
honestly,
Giants
with
defense.
this, okay, with the Seahawks traveling so far across the country. I know we go for early games and whatever else, but there still is something with the whole West-East thing. Does that play in it for you? Is this game largely a fade, or are you on both defenses or none, or where do you stand?
Both defenses are usable, but you did see a Giants team that kind of looked like they were turning the corner last week, which makes me a little more interested. Like if this was a 2-game slate and I was forced to play players from this game, I'd have to sit here and think about it really hard. But realistically, hell no, I'm not playing anyone from this game. Hell no.
Awesome.
I mean, why would you? Are you crazy? Do you have a death wish? Don't play anyone from this game.
Dude, you know me sometimes. Denver at the LA Chargers, 41.5-point favorite. It's a close spread. I mean, not that it matters. They're both implied under 22 points. 1.5 points in the Chargers' favor. Did I call them LA or San Diego? Doesn't matter anymore. We're not talking about this one much, are we, Mitch?
Nope. I just want to tell people just a very broad statement. Do not chase the Melvin Gordon Week 6 stat line in Week 7. He's just a hands-off play. There's much better running backs and better spots, and there's no reason to get cued against the Broncos defense. Other than that, I'd love to just move on. This game's boring.
I thought you were going to stop at nope and just go dead air.
It would have been the one mild play that would have been interesting, but it's really not because of the matchup. You could have been like, oh, can we play Demaryius Thomas with Sanders out of the way? And I'm thinking about it. But the corner for the Chargers is good, and so it's like, oh man, if it was only like a normal matchup,
Simeon sucks.
And Simeon's so bad.
He's so bad.
That's where I came down to that one too. I was like, Sanders out, Demaryius Thomas, he's going to get all the targets. He's going to get probably 4 or 5 additional targets because of Sanders sitting out, but he's probably going to run, one-on-one with a good cornerback and some help over the top to probably double team his ass. Right. So that alone makes me just go, I don't know what to do, so we'll probably just fade it and move on.
Yep, let's do that.
Other than Kevin and his GPP plays thinking about, so. Because there's no way you're doing that cash.
I'm going to cut that off then.
The problem here is there's a lot of statistical things working against us. This is the second meeting of division rivals, and we know from history and from statistics and from our historical studies and whatnot that second game division rivals are generally lower scoring and play to the under. Teams have game planned for one another already once. They've seen what worked. They've seen what didn't work. Now they have a second opportunity to do so in the same season. They know each other really well from previous seasons. All the factors are working against this being some sort of a high-scoring game. The only factor that's always interesting is that, yes, traditionally the past 2 seasons, Gordon has done well against the Denver defense, but it's not blow-up spots. He's just not sucking that bad. So don't bench him on your fantasy league team, and don't put him on the bench. He certainly has a chance of having a fine day. But it doesn't mean I'm gonna pay up for him in daily fantasy sports when I have Zeke Elliott sitting there gonna play at San Francisco. I mean, I'll pay for him.
Right. Keep picking the cherries. Don't mess with the rotten fruit on the floor. Sunday night hammer game. Atlanta Falcons at the New England Patriots. And if you don't mind, if we can do this relatively quickly so that we can get out of here in record time. It's a huge game, and I know it needs a little bit of time at the 55-point total. In a closer spread, it's definite prime, shootout potential. Mm-hmm. What I want you guys to do is kind of take this from both angles. One, how playable is it? I mean, across the main slate, the whole slate, because there are Sunday to Monday slates on FanDuel and whatever else, and some people play those, or the Thursday to Monday. And then think about it from a primetime perspective too, because I think these next 2 games on the primetime slate really set up for a lot of fun stuff. So if there's a way to do this quickly and efficiently, I'd love to do it. But first and foremost, Kevin, this game feels like I need to get you to wrap some House of Pain DFS style. With your little stack it up, stack it in.
Stack it in. Let me begin. I came to win. All right, so that's enough of that. We'll do that. That'll be on the VIP. One of these days, I'm going to do a legit freestyle, DFS Army style.
Freestyle the whole pod?
No, but I'll create an intro for it.
Because I might fade that week.
No, you don't want to hear a whole pod of it. But I might do a little intro one of these days, but
nice.
Only on the intro. I don't need the public hearing that. They don't want to hear me. All right, so on this game, I do have a sneaky play. So let's just make it simple. This is a fucking game of the week. I mean, come on. It's the Patriots. They don't play defense at all this season. You have the Falcons, a little bit slumpy, but have played the Patriots well. There's a Super Bowl rematch. There's a lot of goodies going on here. So I'm gonna. Oh, he wrote the word lots of goodies. Look at that. Same thing.
See, I'm the Nostradamus.
What the hell? That's crazy. All right, so I have a sneaky play because the obvious ones are obvious. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. Yes, we're gonna go back to Julio. Hell yeah. Brady and all of his pass catchers, Gronk, smash, all of that. Great. Freeman, Coleman, everyone's in play. But my interesting thought on this game is, what do we know about Atlanta? What is a factor with the Falcons going back almost 2 seasons that they get destroyed by pass-catching running backs? And who does New England throw passes to in the running back position? None other than...
I know. Mike Gillislee.
Incorrect. That is one demerit, sir. Yes.
See what I mean by trying to throw him off the rails?
There we go. What was I saying? Anyway, so James White.
Pass-catching backs.
Jimmy White, okay? This is the spot. He's cheap. Everybody's going to play Freeman in the primetime slate. Everybody's going to want to play Chris Thompson in the primetime slate. Let's get a little Jimmy White in there. Falcons could be exploited by pass-catching running backs. So that's my sneaky play. Obviously, listen, there are so many obvious ones, and Mitch will go into them too, but Hogan and Brandon Cooks and Danny Amendola and Taylor Gabriel, everybody's in play. Everyone. There is no advantage. Mm-hmm. The New England defense doesn't have some strength that you have to avoid. They don't have that. It's not like they're going to take out Julio Jones because Julio Jones hasn't done shit all year. So there's nothing going on here that tells me it should go one way or another as far as what the offense for the Falcons is going to do. They're just going to be all systems go. Whoever happens to get the points, good times.
That's why I asked for the stack it up, stack it in.
Yeah, stack the shit out of this game, but do a bunch of them. Make more than one lineup. I mean, we saw what happened last week. All of a sudden, Gronk and Brandon Cooks start smashing, and Chris Hogan gets forgotten, and Amendola gets forgotten. And then the next week, Brandon Cooks will be covered, and it'll be all Hogan and Amendola with no Gronk. I mean, you don't know.
Mitch, where you at?
Yeah, so I actually think this game's just as easy to break down and analyze as some of the crappy games are. Kevin nailed it. I mean, who isn't in play in this game? You've got a 55-point over and under. It's a Super Bowl rematch. You're looking at 2 high implied, 26 for Atlanta, 29 for the home team, the Patriots. The Patriots have given up over 2,000 passing yards this year. I didn't have an opportunity to look. It was actually 2,029 passing yards total. I didn't have a chance to look up where that ranks in NFL history, but that has to be some ridiculous, bottom 10 of all time, bottom 5 of all time. 2,000 passing yards in through the first 6 weeks of the season is absolutely ridiculous. So if there's any game for the passing offense of the Falcons to get back on track, this is the one. And everyone's in play. I think that you can, in large field GPP specifically, you can probably fade the really high ownership of somebody like Julio Jones, even though he's in a smash spot. Fade it and grab somebody like Austin Hooper. Maybe grab the red zone touchdown. I don't want to get too intricate with my thoughts on this game. I want to save that for a couple of GPP articles that I write on Friday and Saturday for our members, because I think there's just so much juiciness here, and there's a few ways that we can attack this game, get some pieces of this high-scoring affair without grabbing the chalky ones that everyone wants. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, I will definitely be looking forward to that because you just teased me, which I personally hate you for now. What we have is we have Kevin rapping, stacking up, stacking in. We have Mitch on the other side saying, don't overthink this one. So play them all. Moving on to Monday Night Football, Washington Redskins, Philadelphia Eagles, division game once again. 48.5 point total compared to this week. Pretty damn good. 4.5 points favoring the Philadelphia Eagles. I guess the question is for the Thursday night guys that are looking at that Thursday night game, would this be a spot where you might differentiate off the main slate and take a Carson Wentz or a Kirk Cousins or something? Whoever's first. Kevin, you first.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be really tough to want to use Cousins or Wentz over Brady and what do you do with primetime slates? All right, let's talk about primetime slates because in general, no, of course you want to play Ryan and Brady over both of these guys because they're in a better spot and the game's projected much higher. But in primetime slate, when there's only 2 games, sometimes there's some advantage, or there's always advantage to fading the chalk and just getting down with some less likely play. I certainly remember a game last season, late in the season, where Cousins goes into Philadelphia with the Redskins and literally torches them, puts up 30-plus points. So, there's certainly possibilities there. And on the flip side, the Washington defense is not very, very good. So, yeah, there's literally no reason to not want to have some Wentz coverage, especially since they don't really have a lot going on at the running back position for the Eagles. And, so like a little Wentz-Ertz kind of combo action, maybe some Aguilar. Actually, interesting take on this game is just to notice that Aguilar appears to be the number 1 wide receiver for the Eagles, or he has been. I think that Josh Norman will still be out for this game, so there's not going to be any particular push to one guy versus the other. It's another tricky one in that sense. I mean, like, is it Aguilar? Is it Alshon Jeffrey? Is it going to be Ertz? Certainly Ertz is the best play. But then it's like, wait, what about Jordan Reed? Is he healthy now finally? I don't know. The Eagles play the tight end position fairly well. Who else is catching passes for what? The Cousins, it's been impossible this year to pair him up with anyone. I mean, he's been throwing him to Chris Thompson. Maybe the stack is Cousins to Chris Thompson in this game. I mean, that could be he's not throwing to Terrell Pryor as a primary wide receiver. Crowder's not the top guy. Like, who the hell's the top guy for this guy? So I'm not. They spread the ball around on Washington more than any other team that I've really ever seen, or at least they're doing that this year because they just haven't had somebody emerge as a number 1. So it makes it very difficult from a fantasy perspective to take both Cousins and one of his pass catchers. So I would say naked Cousins all day is playable, and it's kind of similar for Wentz. I mean, like, I guess Wentz to Ertz, but I mean, this game just pales in interestingness to the first game on the primetime.
Mitch, where do you feel? Are you kind of along the same where you're a little more heavily weighted on the previous game?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that without getting too in-depth, because I really like the stuff we do for our members for the primetime slate in Slack, the Eagles, opposing teams are passing the ball 71.5% of the time on the Eagles, which sets up perfectly for Captain Kirk. I mean, the guy's going to go out there, he's going to throw the ball 45, 50 times this game. I don't think they'll be able to run very well, and they're definitely going to be chucking the ball all over the yard. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get too in-depth with this one. I don't think we need to get very cute about it either if you're doing the Thursday night. That Sunday night game is just going to be so juicy. It's almost going to be really hard not to play, especially in cash and small field GPPs. That's about it.
Then let me do this to you. The final gun to your head on the night, and this is strictly personal, and I'm going to totally abuse my power as more or less host, or at least the third guy in on this podcast. My season-long team has Kirk Cousins and Carson Wentz in it, and I was really hoping you guys would give me a little better answer as far as who to start this week.
Cousins.
Man, they're both in good spots. I have a hard time differentiating between those two.
Oh, you suck.
Right down the middle.
So
I will tell you
Cousins
this.
by a nose.
I think I would go with Wentz over Cousins.
Oh, see, all right, screw you both. What we'll do is we'll leave it at that for
Just
the
to mess with
we'll
your
say-
head. I don't actually think.
And you did an effective job at it. So why don't you go back out, smoke your little cigarette, and Mitch can continue to tell us that he's going to tease our VIP stuff for everybody. And in the meantime, what we want you guys to do, obviously, is consider becoming VIP members, because we do have the tools, we do have the research, we do have the brains behind the knucklehead running the podcast that are here to back it up and give you the proper plays, give you the projections, give you the optimizer, allow you to customize everything that we possibly do, and back it up with the best community in daily fantasy sports, bar none, hands down. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass when I say that. I hear it day in and day out in our testimonials. Too many people tell me within their first week or their second week that this is like they've learned more in 2 weeks about daily fantasy sports than they had in 2 years previously, and they thought they knew a lot compared to the friends that they talked to at their sports bars, in their church leagues, in their friend pools in the basement and stuff like that. So you're not in the wrong place. You finally found a little DFS home.
I'm going to add something to that before you finish
please
that.
do.
Because this is really important stuff. If you're playing daily fantasy sports in general, and you're trying to go it, and you're trying to be, I'm not talking about you're a professional and you're quitting your day job. Don't do that. But if you're trying to do it well, you want to win, or you want to at least have a chance, you want to be on a level playing field with your competition. Joining a team like what we bring to the table, and there's one or two others that are okay out there as well. But joining a team is the only way you're going to be successful. It's as simple as that. Yes, you could sit around and spend 5 hours a day compiling your own projections and doing all this research and getting all this information together. But isn't it better to pool resources in one spot and have that done for you, and have some of the better players in the world, some of the top players? I'm talking about ranked people. Myself, you have Mitch, you have Keith. We have a slew of people winning live championships. They're all together, helping each other out, sharing information, sharing advice. We're on top of just look at NBA today. I mean, it's unbelievable. I can't imagine how people are doing NBA without what we bring to the table, or something like that. Half an hour before lock, we're getting reports of scratches, late scratches, who's in, who's out. Not just that, but who's the pivot, who's going to get the minutes now. I mean, you don't even have time to figure this shit out. And without the tools that we bring to the table, it's just not going to be successful. So, I mean, my goodness, we have a free month offer on our site. When you click on a thing, there's a setup for how to get a month free VIP membership. Literally, we're not asking for anything. Go put $50 onto Fantasy Draft, spend it, play there, get a free month. Check out what we do. See what you're missing. If you're listening to this, I don't want to pay for advice. That was me. I think exactly that way. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that anybody would ever try to do this without the help that a group like ours brings to the table. So, Chop, do we have like a promo code or something? Give something out for anybody who's listening who's not a VIP member.
Yeah, if you're not a VIP member, and you are at all considering us, then the promo code that you need to give out is 20OFF, 20-OFF, 20 off. And what that does is that entitles you to a 20% monthly discount off of your subscription for the lifetime of your subscription or your membership with DFS Army. So you go to dfsarmy.com, you go to the VIP tab, you go to 20OFF as the coupon code, and you grandfather in your 20% discount. Takes the $29 rate down to like $23.20. And it doesn't matter if the 29 goes to 35, 45, 55, doesn't matter. You're still forever paying the $23.20 as long as you remain a member for the DFS Army. So that's the coupon code. That's our little gift to you for making it all the way to the end of the podcast. Mitch, say goodnight. Is Mitch even still with us?
I think he might be sleeping.
You fell asleep. Okay, so Kevin, I'll let you sign us off. I'm out of here too. You guys have a good week 7. Hope to see you inside the Army where we're talking DFS all week long.
That's it. Let's make money this week, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you for listening to the DFS Army podcast. Join the DFS Army today and gain access to our private Slack chat, where you can chat with real DFS pros and coaches, as well as other DFS Army members with winning track records. Also included in your membership is access to our premium articles, DFS Army weighted projections for every sport we offer, from NFL to MMA, weekly player picks and cheat sheets, the strategy vault of timeless concepts, and the DFS Army Domination Station, a truly state-of-the-art lineup optimizer, offering your personal projections or ours. The DFS Army membership is the best value across the industry. Join today using the coupon code PODCAST on DFSArmy.com to unlock 20% off your monthly subscription and get 2 free ebooks, as well as the secrets to unlocking a new level to your game.